The real-life Men in Black. When people hear the term Men in Black, their minds often conjure images of the popular movie franchise bearing the same name. However, while the general concept of these films aligns with the notion of a secretive group sending agents to investigate UFO witnesses, real-life accounts present a far more unsettling portrayal. Numerous theories exist regarding the identity of this organization. Some propose that they are a highly classified government agency entrusted with the task of concealing evidence and reports pertaining to UFO sightings, and potentially even the existence of extraterrestrial beings on Earth. Alternatively, some suggest that these eerie individuals are, in fact, extraterrestrials themselves, either appearing in their true form or assuming deceptive disguises. Yet other researchers entertain the possibility that the Men in Black have ties to an underground civilization, potentially an ancient indigenous group that was compelled to retreat beneath the Earth's surface in the distant past. Indeed, numerous ancient texts recount such events, and certain contemporary researchers argue that an invisible conflict is underway between these two opposing forces. It is worth noting, however, that this perspective is not universally embraced within the UFO community. The Men in Black organization appears to possess a far more intricate structure and agenda than even the most dedicated investigators have envisioned. It is important to acknowledge that those who have extensively delved into the study of these menacing figures often report deeply unsettling experiences. Just who are the Men in Black? While many of us associate this peculiar and disconcerting group with their appearances following UFO sightings, the truth is that their encounters, as documented in numerous reports, are far more intricate. Likewise, their motives for making contact and their actual origins are shrouded in complexity. For instance, let's delve into the strange and captivating case of the interactions between Ingrid Kold and Woodrow Derenberger during the winter of 1966. This incident bears similarities to the subsequent encounter involving Robert Richardson a year later. In both instances, a mysterious man materialized in a car on an otherwise deserted road, coinciding with the landing of an unidentified craft nearby. One such account involves Dr. Hopkins, who, following his research into UFO phenomena in the mid-1970s, experienced an unexpected visitation from an unfamiliar gentleman dressed in a black suit, hat, and a voluminous coat. Notably, when this visitor removed his hat, he revealed a completely hairless and pale-skinned head. In brief, this visitor suggested to Dr. Hopkins that he should discontinue his research. However, what piques our interest here, and what we will explore further, is the gentleman's remark to Dr. Hopkins about his waning energy levels, prompting his departure. This intriguing detail implies that the Men in Black possess an otherworldly origin, contrary to their outward human appearance. Further evidence of an underground civilization. Based on accounts which include unusually pale skin, dark glasses, and robotic behavior, many researchers propose that these peculiar beings are not affiliated with a clandestine government agency, but rather represent a subterranean civilization. One seasoned investigator, Nick Redfern, expressed in 2011 that his research strongly indicated the Men in Black to be an underground alien army infiltrating our lives. Redfern is not alone in making such assertions. Several researchers, including David Jacobs, have posited that the purpose and agenda behind alien abductions align with this theory, an endeavor to gain control over humanity through hybridization, effectively seizing power from within. While these suggestions may initially sound outlandish, the fact that reputable researchers entertain them should prompt us to grant them more attention than we collectively have been willing to give. Could the wearing of dark glasses, the pale skin, and the choice of heavy trench coats be attributed to their unsuitability for the surface atmosphere? Is this why they appear to rapidly lose energy after only a brief period? Alternatively, do their robotic mannerisms imply that they are indeed robotic explorers dispatched to the surface, carrying out the bidding of their subterranean masters? We must contemplate whether these underground entities are extraterrestrial beings utilizing the alleged inner Earth, or if what we perceive as aliens are, in fact, an indigenous race that sought refuge underground at some point in history. Accounts seemingly go back longer than we might think. In our detailed analysis of the airship sightings during the late 19th and early 20th century, we explored what could potentially be among the earliest documented instances of Men in Black encounters. According to the research records compiled by Ray Boach, numerous reports describe the sudden appearance of oddly attired individuals during the airship wave of 1897. However, one particularly intriguing account emerged several years later, across the Atlantic Ocean in Wales, United Kingdom. Surprisingly, this report was featured in a local newspaper called the Barmouth Advertiser. According to the newspaper, amid the numerous peculiar sightings of lights and airships in the region, an anonymous local woman claimed that a mysterious gentleman had materialized in her room on 3 consecutive nights. Furthermore, this visitor conveyed a message to the woman, though the report indicates that she was too frightened to divulge its contents. Of particular interest here is the recurring theme in many Men in Black accounts, wherein they seemingly appear within a room as if from nowhere. One of the most notable instances involves Albert Bender, who, after years of investigating UFOs in the mid-1950s, abruptly ceased his investigative pursuits, asserting that he had uncovered the mystery of UFOs. Subsequently, researcher Gray Barker revealed that Bender had experienced a visitation from what is now commonly referred to as the Men in Black. Remarkably, these menacing individuals materialized in his room, as corroborated by Barker's findings. Connections to the gods of antiquity. It was only after several years that Bender finally disclosed details of the incident. In his account, he asserted that the Men in Black were, in actuality, alien beings whose true forms were so monstrous that they adopted a more familiar appearance. Adding a touch of plausibility to the concept of an underground alien presence, Bender claimed that this particular group of extraterrestrials, allegedly originating from the planet Kazakh, had established a base in Antarctica. Their purpose, according to him, was to extract a valuable element from the sea. There are several intriguing aspects to consider here. Many reports and legends of reptilian extraterrestrial entities, spanning back to ancient times, describe their appearance in a similar manner. It is worth noting that numerous ancient writings, for instance, prohibit the depiction of certain gods and deities in their true forms. Moreover, a significant number of UFO sightings, as we frequently observe, occur above or near large bodies of water, including the Earth's seas and oceans. Could there be a correlation? Furthermore, what should we make of the claims regarding an Antarctic base? Conspiracies surrounding secret facilities and underground installations in Antarctica have circulated for decades, captivating the interest of conspiracy researchers to this day. Even the rumored German expeditions to establish a base in the region add to the intrigue. If the far-fetched rumors of the World War II Germany attempting to form an alliance with an extraterrestrial race in Antarctica hold any truth, Albert Bender's claims suddenly become even more captivating. The encounter of Paul Miller. One of the most captivating encounters involving the Men in Black occurred in November 1961 in North Dakota, as recounted by Paul Miller. On that particular night, Miller and 3 companions were making their way home after a hunting trip. They noticed a peculiar object materialize overhead and descend into a field at the roadside. Intrigued, they slowed their vehicle and observed the object, initially mistaking it for a crashing airplane. To their astonishment, the object abruptly vanished into thin air. Puzzled by this strange spectacle, they resumed driving, only for the object to reappear once more. This time, 2 humanoid figures emerged from the craft. Miller, compelled by a mix of curiosity and fear, exited the vehicle and aimed his gun at the beings, firing a shot that seemed to injure one of them. Overwhelmed by rising fear, the 4 men swiftly fled the scene. They gradually realized that approximately 3 hours of time had inexplicably gone missing. While they attempted to make sense of the bewildering events among themselves, they collectively agreed not to report the incident or disclose it to anyone outside their group. However, the following day brought an even stranger turn of events, further deepening the mystery. Miller, an office worker for the Air Force, arrived at his workplace the following day with a lingering sense of unease about the events of the previous evening. Despite his apprehension, he proceeded with his routine. However, his sense of normalcy was abruptly disrupted when 3 mysterious individuals, donning black suits and ties, approached him, expressing a desire to speak with him. These individuals claimed to be government representatives, yet when Miller requested identification, they completely disregarded his request. A shiver ran down his spine when they mentioned they hoped he was telling the truth regarding the UFO sighting. He couldn't comprehend how they were aware of his encounter, which only heightened his sense of alarm. In response to his inquiry, they simply stated that they had a report. Any doubts Miller may have harbored regarding the seriousness of these agents vanished when they proceeded to reveal an astonishing level of knowledge about him, including his place of employment and personal details. Their line of questioning concerning the previous night's incident was particularly intimidating since Miller realized they possessed the answers and could easily detect any falsehoods. Several years elapsed before Miller summoned the courage to report the encounter to UFO investigators, emphasizing the lasting impact and fear instilled by his interaction with these individuals. In July 1967, in Toledo, Ohio, a man named Robert Richardson reported a peculiar incident involving a supposed collision with a UFO while en route to the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. In a manner reminiscent of the previous case, Richardson recounted that as he approached a bend in the road, the object suddenly materialized before him, leaving him no time to brake, resulting in a minor collision. Strangely, upon impact, the object swiftly vanished into thin air. Richardson promptly reported the incident to the police, who accompanied him to the location to investigate. However, upon arrival, they found only tire marks on the road, providing no tangible evidence. Nonetheless, haunted by the experience, Richardson returned alone to the scene shortly after. This time, he stumbled upon a small lump of metal, which he believed could have originated from the craft that appeared and disappeared so abruptly. He collected the fragment and brought it home. 3 days later, around 11 p.m., Richardson was startled by a knock on his front door. Upon opening it, he encountered 2 unidentified men in their early 20s. Without revealing their identities, they entered his home and proceeded to question him for approximately 10 minutes. Their line of inquiry demonstrated an unsettling familiarity with private details about Richardson's life that were not publicly available. Surprisingly, Richardson noted that these individuals were not particularly hostile, and even left behind a contact number before departing in a black Cadillac, a vehicle commonly mentioned in similar reports. Interestingly, when Richardson attempted to call the provided number later that night, he discovered it was not yet issued. Just as Richardson attempted to put the perplexing events behind him, he found himself visited once again, a week later, by 2 different men. Dressed in dark suits and displaying a distinct dark complexion, these newcomers arrived in a brand new Dodge. They entered his home and engaged him in conversation regarding the UFO incident that occurred 10 days prior. Their demeanor was one of attempting to persuade him that he hadn't actually encountered anything unusual that evening. Richardson dismissed their assertions, but a chill ran through him when they inquired about the piece of recovered metal. He froze inside, realizing that he had only shared this information with 2 members of a PRO. What followed grew even more foreboding. Richardson disclosed to the men that the metal had been sent for analysis. In response, they ominously uttered, "Had these enigmatic visitors acquired such information by interrogating the APRO investigators? Or did they have access to methods such as phone tapping? Alternatively, could their knowledge stem from a more paranormal source?" Additionally, Richardson noticed that while one of the men spoke flawless English, the other possessed a distinctive accent that he struggled to identify. Nevertheless, he recalled sensing a vague foreign quality about them. Photographs of Men in Black, the Jack and Mary Robinson case. In a 2011 interview with Nick Redfern featured in New Dawn magazine, several instances of photographs capturing these men in black were discussed. One notable case took place in 1968 in New Jersey, attributed by Redfern to researchers Tim Green Beckley and Jim Mosley. The incident centered around UFO researcher Jack Robinson and his wife, Mary, who began experiencing unsettling events within their home. Upon returning from outings, they would discover subtle signs of someone having entered their apartment building, particularly evident in their UFO files being disturbed. The situation took a chilling turn when Mary noticed a peculiar, zombie-like man dressed in a dark suit observing their apartment. This eerie figure would appear in the doorway of the building across from theirs, consistently gazing directly up at their apartment window on consecutive days. The couple reported these occurrences to the aforementioned UFO investigators, who decided to discreetly drive by the following morning to observe the situation firsthand. To their astonishment, they indeed witnessed the mysterious individual, with Tim Green Beckley managing to capture a photograph, widely regarded as one of the best and only images of a member of this enigmatic organization. What my father saw made me a believer in the MIBs. My father works as a police officer, known for his straightforward nature and his grounded beliefs in tangible evidence. At the time of this particular incident, he had already served in the police force for over 20 years, while I was a teenager. Due to his night shifts, he would often come home in the early morning to join us for breakfast before heading to bed, just as we prepared to leave for school. During these moments, he would usually be in good spirits, regaling us with amusing or captivating stories from his day on duty. However, on this particular morning, something seemed off. Unusually quiet, he refrained from eating his breakfast. My mother noticed his change in demeanor and inquired about his well-being. It took him a while to respond, and finally, he admitted, "I'm not sure what I experienced tonight." Concerned, we, the children, persisted with our questions until he finally divulged the following information. It had been a calm night, and he was patrolling the streets with his colleague in a police car. Suddenly, they received a radio transmission informing them of an ongoing car chase nearby that required their assistance. Hastening towards the scene, they soon caught up with the suspect's vehicle. The radio had mentioned 2 men occupying the front seats. As my father's car pulled up beside theirs, he managed to glimpse inside. To his surprise, the 2 men in the front seats were engaged in a heated argument. However, there was a third person in the back seat. This individual possessed an eerie appearance, completely bald with an almost ghostly pale complexion, dressed entirely in black. Their eyes were unusually dark, and they locked gazes with my father through the car window, flashing an unsettlingly wide grin. This encounter deeply unsettled my father, as it felt as if the person were peering directly into his soul. Convinced of the presence of this third individual, my father promptly alerted the other police cars via the radio. The car chase concluded when the suspects crashed into a fence and fled into a nearby field. They were apprehended merely minutes later. Curiously, only 2 men were found. No trace of the third person my father had witnessed. Bewildered, my father questioned his fellow colleagues at the scene, seeking confirmation that he hadn't imagined the mysterious figure. However, none of them had seen anyone other than the 2 suspects. "I can't explain it," he confessed to us. "I saw him as clear as day, and his grin was reminiscent of death itself." This incident occurred in Germany around 2004 or 2005. Even to this day, we remain devoid of any logical explanation for what my father truly encountered. Let me begin by stating that this peculiar occurrence has persisted for over a year now, with some days being particularly distressing while others remain uneventful. I reside in a serene, rural area and have been living in this house since my son was 2 years old. Until about 3 years ago, nothing unusual had ever transpired or felt awry. However, one summer day, while sitting on my patio alone since my son was not home at the time, an uncanny sensation washed over me, a distinct feeling of being watched. My house is encompassed by lush wooded regions, and my driveway extends nearly half a mile from the street to my residence. As I directed my gaze towards the woods behind my house, I spotted a man standing before a tree. He appeared elderly, possibly in his 70s, donning a faded black suit. He simply stood there, fixated on me without any discernible action. What struck me was his bald head, where the left side seemed strangely deflated, akin to a basketball that had lost its air. This encounter left me apprehensive, prompting me to retreat indoors swiftly. Now, let's fast forward to the present moment. Both my son and I have witnessed this enigmatic figure on numerous occasions. He remains confined within the woods, never venturing beyond, devoid of speech or any attempts to engage with us. Over time, we have grown accustomed to his presence, maintaining a mutual understanding. We respect his space, and he respects ours. Around 3 months ago, during early October, I embarked on a stroll in our yard alongside my dog. Suddenly, she began barking intensely and dashed into the woods. I urgently called out for her to halt and pursued her, covering a distance of approximately 400 feet. Just as I managed to catch up and secure her leash, my faithful companion abruptly started growling. It was a ferocious growl that I had never heard from her before. Although she is typically friendly towards people and would never harm a soul, her demeanor was now charged with an almost menacing energy. Intrigued and somewhat alarmed, I turned around to investigate the cause. There, standing merely 4 feet away, was a man. I hadn't heard his approach or noticed his presence until that very moment. There is absolutely no plausible reason for him to be lurking in the woods behind my house, especially considering that my nearest neighbor resides a mile away. Strangely enough, this time he appeared in a navy blue suit, with his mid-30 seconds appearance complemented by blonde hair. Startled by his sudden presence, I involuntarily exclaimed, "Oh, you scared me." In response, he casually remarked, "Beautiful day out today." Acknowledging his observation, I attempted to sidestep him and continue on my way. However, as I drew closer, an intense wave of nausea engulfed me, causing my mouth to fill with saliva and nearly inducing vomiting. Pressing on, accompanied by my faithful canine companion, I opted to avoid leading him to my house, where my son was alone. Instead, I traversed along the edge of the woods, following this path all the way to the top of my driveway. Glancing back repeatedly, I failed to spot him anywhere in sight. After several minutes, I decided to make my way back down the driveway, heading home. At that moment, my son contacted me and said, "I thought you were in the backyard." I responded, "No, I walked the road, and we're on our way back." My son informed me. "A man came to the door and told me to relay a message. It's very rude to walk away during a conversation." Since that unsettling encounter, inexplicable incidents have plagued us at least 3 times a week. I stumbled upon a tooth lying on my kitchen floor, discovered a small cross pendant resting on my windowsill, and found peculiar bruises on my arm, resembling distinct fingerprints. Tragically, my beloved dog succumbed to metastasized sarcoma, initially mistaken for a mere shoulder sprain. Poignantly, on the very same day my canine companion passed away, both my son and I caught sight of this man once again. However, this time, his face was visible, but his body appeared an eerie grayish-white. His arms were abnormally long, while his legs extended in an uncanny manner, contorted in a spider-like crouch. In the autumn of 2012, my 2 friends and I embarked on a trip from Chicago to Dune State Park in Indiana, taking the Southern Line Rail. Our plan was to camp for the weekend, oblivious to the impending arrival of a severe thunderstorm. As the clock struck midnight, our tent collapsed, leaving us no choice but to seek refuge in a cement park bathroom. Realizing the dire situation, we abandoned our drenched blankets and tent in a bin, and at daybreak, we made the decision to hike back to the train station and return home. Upon arriving at the train station around 5 a.m., the atmosphere was dim, with only minimal light in the mostly deserted station. It was the type of quaint old station consisting of a box structure beside the tracks, featuring a small kiosk and a few benches. Although unmanned, the lights were on, and a sporadic intercom system emitted random announcements. Exhausted, cold, and on edge of a sleepless night, we felt a sense of relief. We slumped onto the benches and pictured 3 soaked teenagers from the city, sleep-deprived and delirious. And then it happened. The lights flickered, abruptly plunging us into darkness. The announcements ceased, and the lead boards went blank. Before us, separated only by a wall of glass, lay the platform. In the midst of the darkness, we heard a loud, crackling static noise, and suddenly, an incredible sight unfolded. A colossal, wavy wall of vivid green light surged along the tracks, swiftly passing in front of us and continuing its journey eastward. Its velocity was astonishing, easily surpassing 60 miles per hour, yet the light emanated as a continuous, undulating wall that trailed behind, gradually dissipating into thin air. The only comparison I can draw is to the enchanting spectacle of the northern lights, with waves of glowing greenish-blue hues. As swiftly as it had arrived, the mesmerizing display vanished, and the lights in the train station flickered back on, reinstating the familiar illumination. But then nothing else happened, and a few other people came to the station to take the 7 in the morning train. This is rural Indiana, so it was mostly blue-collar people going to work in other towns. Nobody was dressed like Chicago business commuter. We still had hours to wait, so we walked outside the station into the parking lot, which is when I saw a black car parked a ways off down the road, and a man in totally absurd clean-cut suit and shiny black shoes and sunglasses. A whole deal, walking up to the tracks next to the building. Some local police officers came and he spoke with them, but they wouldn't tell us anything except that the trains were delayed. The man in black never entered the station, but my friends and I spied on him inspecting the tracks for a long while. Then it was 7, then 8, then 9 and 10, and finally the police tell us that the tracks were hit by lightning, and like 5 stations are out. We hitchhiked to Gary, where the next running station was, with another angry commuter, and never heard anything else. So even if the tracks were hit by lightning, what the hell was the green wall of light shooting down the track? Can somebody explain this phenomenon to me, or did we actually see something unexplainable? I've heard of ball lightning being responsible for a lot of weird light phenomenon, but never something like this. Lewis 45 replying to post by Dresser 1. The Men in Black. Several years ago, I had a peculiar encounter that I believe involved men in black. The road was riddled with deep potholes, rocks, and a washboard-like surface, making it impossible to drive faster than 20 miles per hour without risking veering into a ditch. As I rounded a bend, I encountered a car that I couldn't identify, approaching from the opposite direction. Inside the vehicle sat a very slender man wearing a black suit. It's customary on roads like these to make eye contact and sometimes exchange a friendly wave when passing another driver. However, this man did not acknowledge my truck's presence at all. I continued driving for about half a mile, only to come across yet another man dressed in a black suit, driving an unidentifiable car. Again, there was no eye contact or acknowledgement. I felt shocked because first, I encountered a man in a suit in this remote area. Second, I couldn't discern the make of the car. And third, the second man looked exactly like the first, and displayed the same behavior of complete disinterest. As I proceeded for another half mile, a third MIB appeared, causing me to panic. In that moment, I recall thinking that these individuals were government agents and that a significant operation was about to unfold, prompting me to quickly head back home, leaving the scene in haste. Upon arriving home, I was relieved to find my dad waiting for me on the porch. I shared the strange encounter with my husband, and he speculated that it might be a drug bust. However, I couldn't fully convey to him the eerie and unsettling nature of the encounters. There was something distinctly off about these individuals. 2 nights later, as we lay in bed sound asleep, we were abruptly awakened by what initially sounded like a helicopter landing on our gravel driveway. It seemed impossible, but those were our initial thoughts as we emerged from our slumber. Hastily, we rushed to the window, struggling to raise the blinds. Outside, vivid flashing lights illuminated the surroundings, yet there was no accompanying sound. And then, suddenly, silence prevailed. Morning arrived, and we were left wondering what on earth had transpired. Something had undoubtedly occurred, but the details eluded our memory. Stepping outside into the crispness of a beautiful spring morning, we noticed our neighbor walking up the driveway. This behavior was uncharacteristic for him, which immediately raised our suspicions that something was amiss. I distinctly recall anticipating that he would share unsettling news. True to our apprehension, he asked if they got us too. Confused, we inquired about the identity of they, but he admitted he did not know. He proceeded to explain that his car had been parked in his driveway and securely locked when he retired for the night. However, this morning, he discovered it situated in his pasture. Astonishingly, there was no damage to the vehicle, and it remained locked. Additionally, there were no discernible tracks indicating how it had been maneuvered through the tall grass. That was all the information he could provide. I couldn't shake the feeling that the enigmatic men in black cars and suits were somehow connected to the inexplicable relocation of the car and the bizarre incident with the phantom helicopter descending onto our driveway. What are your thoughts on this peculiar series of events? During the late 1980s, I resided in a college town situated in East Texas. On one dark evening, I embarked on a drive to visit a friend who lived approximately 7 miles outside of town. The farm-to-market road was flanked by towering pine trees, and in the evenings, traffic was scarce. Along that particular stretch, devoid of any houses, the drive felt enveloped in darkness, devoid of any visual cues indicating the specific era or time. To my surprise, as I ventured forth that night, I noticed headlights approaching me through the darkness. What caught my attention even more was the fact that the vehicle was moving slowly and swaying back and forth across the center lane. Acting swiftly, I pulled over to the shoulder, assuming it would be the safest course of action in case the driver was intoxicated or facing some other impairment. My headlights illuminated a black, early 1960s Buick, a 4-door sedan, and to my astonishment, it also pulled over on the opposite shoulder, almost parallel to my truck. The dim glow of the Buick's dashboard lights allowed me to discern the silhouette of a man wearing a hat. Not a cowboy hat, but rather the type of hat that men across the country commonly sported during the 1960s. Curiosity consumed me as I continued to observe, anticipating signs of distress or a potential need for assistance. However, the man remained motionless, fixedly staring straight ahead. While I probably should have felt a greater concern for my safety, an inexplicable impulse compelled me to approach him and ensure his well-being. Exiting my truck, I crossed the road and positioned myself a few feet from his vehicle, slightly forward of his car door. He appeared to be a slender, older gentleman dressed in a black suit and sporting a narrow black tie. Most intriguingly, he wore sunglasses, despite the darkness of the night. He remained fixated on the steering wheel, never once glancing in my direction. With his window rolled up, I raised my voice, asking loudly if he was okay, but it felt as though my words were swallowed by the encompassing trees. Still, he kept staring straight ahead, unaffected by my attempts to engage him. I resorted to knocking on his window, hoping for a response, yet there was nothing. Desperate, I rapped harder, raising my voice even louder, but to no avail. There was no reaction, not a flicker of movement. A chill crawled up my spine, and I cautiously retreated backward, my eyes fixed on the car, searching for any sign of movement. As soon as my backside touched the side of my truck, I swiftly leaped inside, locking the door. I continued to watch intently for a few minutes, but nothing changed. Eventually, I shifted into drive and slowly returned to the road, my gaze fixed on the Buick through the side mirror. It remained stationary as I sped away. Upon reaching my friend's house, I left the truck running and urgently pulled her out of the house, explaining that we needed to check on someone we had encountered on the road. Hastily, we drove back down the road to where I had last seen him. However, despite my best efforts, I ended up scouring the entire town, searching for any trace of him, but he had vanished without a trace. To this day, I remain perplexed about the identity and nature of the individual I encountered. Was he a man in black type, shrouded in mystery? Could he have been a lost soul, eternally trapped in a perpetual drive? Or perhaps just a senile old man, oblivious to his surroundings, taking a leisurely ride in his well-preserved classic car? What are your thoughts on this enigmatic encounter?